The meeting will now come to order. Welcome to the November 8th, 2021 meeting of the City of Raleigh Board of Adjustment. My name is John Kuntz and I'm Vice Chair of the Board. I will be filling in today for Rodney Swink, who's the Board of Adjustment Chair. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina General Statutes and the city's Unified Development Ordinance. We are authorized to hear requests for variances from the city's UDO, special use permits, and other requests as may be provided by the city ordinances. In hearing cases, the board conducts a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it is like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decisions. The standard the applicant must meet to be granted the request is set forth in the UDO. The board hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standard when making its decision. The board must base its decisions upon competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and standards, not personal preference or opinion. Witnesses may testify as to facts to which they are competent to testify so long as those facts relate to the legal standards. In addition, lay or non-expert witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, this board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about impacts on traffic safety. Focusing your testimony and arguments on the applicable facts and standard will allow the board to hear cases in an efficient and timely manner. Since today's meeting will be conducted remotely, in addition to the general quasi-judicial rules, today's hearings will be conducted in accordance with the state statutes that allow for remote evidentiary hearings during the current COVID-19 states of emergency. For the convenience of those participating today, I'm going to outline how we will conduct today's remote evidentiary hearings. First of all witnesses must be sworn in. Because of the remote format, individuals who signed up to speak, as well as city staff participants, have already signed a written oath form, which will be reaffirmed on record as they testify today. Participants also have already provided written consent to today's remote hearing. Secondly, we will begin with a staff presentation from a member of the planning department. Following staff's presentation, the applicant will be acknowledged to present their case and witnesses. The BOA will acknowledge the attorney or applicant for each case first as a point person for the applicant. Following the applicant, anyone else who signed up to participate or in support or opposition to the request will be given the opportunity to speak. The applicant will be given the opportunity for cross-examination as well as rebuttal and a closing statement. When all testimony is complete, we will close the evidentiary hearing. Board members will deliberate and vote on the case. For variance requests, a 4/5 vote of the board is required to grant the variance. For all other hearings and matters, the decision will be made by a simple majority of the board. Following the meeting, the board's decision will be prepared with written findings of fact and conclusions of law. The decision will be incorporated into the meeting minutes and will be adopted at the same time in meeting minutes. We will now conduct the evidentiary hearings on today's agenda. I'll pause there. Has Kathy beat in yet? Are we still?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Okay, so we have 5 of us and we need 4/5 for variances. Is that right?
Right. So you have 5 now with Michael Rainey filling in as a city alternate for all cases.
Okay. All right, let's start off old business, evidentiary hearing A, the case 11009 Ingleside Place, Westchester Commercial, property owner variance BOA-0010-2021. And I have a note here that Michael Birch has asked for a continuance of that case. Is Mr. Birch or Worth here? I'm hearing they're not here, but they have written.
They're here. Worth is here at least. I don't know if he's able to unmute himself or if Ray can unmute Worth Mills.
Well, I do have it. Is this sufficient for continuance request that we have in writing?
Yeah, I think you're okay.
We'll continue that. And we'll go to the next old business, which is evidentiary hearing B.
Just make sure, sorry to interrupt, make sure we say we're continuing to the December 13, 2021, so we don't have to renotice it.
We're continuing case BOA 0010-2021 to the December 13th, 2021 BOA meeting. All right. Next up, all business evidentiary hearing B. We'll call case 727 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Alan Rhett Fussell, property owner, variance BOA-0047-2021. We'll start with staff presentation.
I need to be sworn.
All right. You swear to affirm that the testimony you provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Eric?
I do.
All right, continue.
Let me share PowerPoint. So the subject property is located at 727 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. It's a request for a 15-foot variance from the 20-foot minimum rear setback set forth in section 2.2.1.b of the Unified Development Ordinance, as well as a variance from the 40% maximum driveway area in the front yard set forth in section 8.3.5.c.2.e of the Unified Development Ordinance in order to permit a driveway and parking area to constitute no more than 580 square feet, which equates to approximately 52% of the 1,130 square foot front yard area, which is defined in the code as the area between the front building line and the front property line, in order to construct a detached house on a 0.7 acre property zoned residential 10 and located at 727 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Here's an aerial showing the property. It is adjacent to essentially a paper alleyway to the east and sits on the north side of Martin Luther King Boulevard. Here's the proposed site plan showing the layout of the house. The areas in green are what are proposed to be parking areas. The home does have a 2-car garage shown, as well as having additional parking space in the front yard area. Currently, the Unified Development Ordinance requires a minimum of 2 parking spaces for a single-family detached house, and the city code does recognize those garage spaces as meeting that requirement. Here's a picture of the proposed building. Again, they're also seeking a 20-foot rear yard setback. This is just an aerial. An earlier version of this application did include some relief from our infill compatibility requirements. That was submitted by the applicant, but the project is not subject to that code section, so that has been deleted from the request. There are still some references to that within the testimony and staff response, but those portions are no longer under consideration because the project is not subject to sidewall height requirements from infill. But this is showing the structure with the tuck under garage, and the rear of the structure is in the bottom right corner of these elevations, and that's the portion of the structure which would be seeking a 15-foot variance from the 20-foot rear yard setback requirement. So they're seeking to be located only 5 feet from the rear property line, which is a 75% reduction in the rear yard standard from the residential 10 zoning, which is applicable here. I'm happy to go through any questions the board may have at this time, but otherwise that would conclude my presentation.
Eric, this is John. So it's a 75% request reduction, or reduction in request?
Yeah, the standard is a 20-foot rear yard setback, and they're seeking to reduce that down to 5 feet.
Any other questions of Eric from the board?
And then again, they're requesting approximately an additional 12% of parking area in the front yard over and above the 40% allowance the code otherwise provides.
All right, any other questions? All right, thanks, Eric. All right, the applicant, Toby, are you here?
Give me one moment as I unmute him.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Coleman, you're unmuted.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Toby Coleman on here on behalf of the applicant. I think I need to be sworn in as well. Unless we're not sworn in council.
All right, just state your name, address, relationship to the case.
Toby Coleman, 150 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. Here as counsel for the owner, Alan Rhett Fussell.
All right. Do you want to go ahead and swear in your applicant?
Not sure Mr. Fussell's on. Is Josh Crumpler or Craig Bethel on?
They are both on the line.
Okay. They're also members of the team.
You'll go ahead and swear them in too?
Yeah, please.
Craig or Josh, you there?
We are.
All right, do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
I do.
And so go ahead and state your name, address, and relationship to the case as well.
Josh
Go ahead, Josh.
Josh Crumpler, 2308 Ridge Road, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27612. The civil engineer for the project.
And Craig?
Craig Bethel, 19 West Target Street, Suite 501, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. The architect for the project.
Okay, perfect. Okay, back to you, Toby. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Chair. If we could just go to the next slide, that's pretty much my main slide, and I can talk over that. As we're getting there, as Eric outlined, there's two variances we're seeking today. Both are a result of the property's uniquely small size. It's 50 by 50. And it's sloping topography, which you could see in those, both in the site plan there on the right, as well as in the plans for the home that Eric showed earlier. And the fact that its only frontage is along Martin Luther King Boulevard, which is a 4-lane street. And so we're seeking two variances. One, as you were just discussing, is the rear setback. So we're seeking a variance from the 20-foot setback requirement to permit the rear of the home to be located within 5 feet of the northern property line. I'll note that although that's a 75% reduction of the rear setback requirements for the R10 zoning district, which this is located in, it is equal to the side setback requirement for R10. So in R10, a side setback is 5 feet, and this house will be backing up on the side, on a side lot line of that not the property immediately to the east, but rather sort of the next property up, as you can see. So it'll be consistent with the side lot line setback. That would be the expectation of that property owner. And also, that property owner has not raised any objections to it. The other variance is to increase the amount of impervious area in what the city defines as the front yard. You know, the area between the front lot line and the front of the house, from 40% to 52%. That's to allow for this proposed turnaround area. Again, the idea here is not really to create more parking. The idea here is that MLK is a relatively busy street, a relatively large street, and this property has some topography where actually you go downhill to get on the property from MLK. So for safety purposes, they want Mr. Fussell wants a turnaround so that vehicles don't ever have to back out of the property. I did go ahead and look, and for whatever it's worth, DOT does collect traffic data. Actually, so if this is sort of adjoining to the west there is, I believe, Ligon. And so there's a traffic data point right to the immediately to the west of this home. And in 2019, the average daily traffic was 21,500 cars a day. So some pretty significant traffic, not really something you want to back out onto. As Eric mentioned, the adjoining property owner, I think Matthew Avician, and I hope I'm saying that name right, at 920 South State Street, requested, and that's the owner immediately to the east there, requested that this hearing be continued from last meeting so that he can gather more information. We have reached out to Mr. Avician and his attorney, Randy Herman, to try to touch base with their concerns. I believe they're both here today, so you'll hear from them. But I just want to note, we've reached out to them and have not heard back as to what their concerns are. Based on what we know, we do not see any impact on Mr. Avician's home. Again, we're not requesting a reduction in the side setback as to Mr. Avician's property. We're going to maintain the UDO required amount. And as Eric mentioned, we're not requesting any variances from UDO requirements relating to height. And because this property is by topography below Mr. Avician's property at 920 South State Street, we don't see we don't believe that the relatively minimal increase in impervious surface in the front yard will create any stormwater runoff issues for Mr. Avician's property, since the water runs downhill towards Ligon and not towards his house. To the extent there is a concern, we're not 100% clear what it is. We do want to note that Mr. Fussell is expressly authorized by the UDO to build a single-family detached home on this lot, despite its size. This lot was created in 1954, long before the current zoning regulations were put into place. And actually, the prior owner of the 920 South Street parcel, Nathan Sledge, was the one who actually subdivided this parcel out. There has been a home, you can actually see on this picture sort of the remainder of it, but there was a home on this property for most of the last 70 years. According to Wake County records, it was demolished in 2014. So that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions. Again, as you heard, Mr. Crumpler and Mr. Bethel are here, and we would ask for the opportunity to respond to any comments in opposition. And we would ask that the staff report and all documents be entered into the record.
Does that complete your presentation, Toby?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. We'll go to the opposition. Randy, is that you?
Yes. So,
Okay. Is Matthew with you as well?
yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and swear both of you in. We'll start with you, Randy. Go ahead and state your name and address and nature of the case.
Randy Herman, attorney with the law firm of BA Folk, 5000 Center Green Way, Suite 500 in Cary. And I am the attorney for Matthew Avician, the adjoining property owner.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, Matthew?
Yes, my name is Matthew Avician, and I am the owner of 920 South State Street, and I swear and affirm.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, continue, Randy. Thank you.
So my client wants to speak first, and then I'll follow up with some comments on the legal issues.
Sure. So, as I said, my name is Matthew Avician, and I'm the owner of 920 South State Street. And I would like to thank the board for hearing my case today. So I'm in opposition to the variance requests of case 047 TAC 2021 for several reasons, and to help with my argument, several photos have been provided. So I'm going through it. The first four slides, show the aerial and survey plans of the respective lots. They help show the arrangement of the two lots and the currently built building and the placement of the proposed structure. The focus being that the proposed structure is being placed towards the back of the lot with respect to Martin Luther. It is important to understand that this property line is my home's backyard and that an existing deck looks out in this direction. So when you move to slide 6, so for slide 6, it helps to show what the view currently looks like. This
Yeah,
is
so
shortly after a 4-year project to remove trees and debris from a portion of my property, which was not included inside the fence at the time of my purchase. And then slide 7 shows an approximate outline of the structure proposed. At the time that this was placed, or excuse me, since the proposed plans provided by the applicant at the time only showed the placement and not the height when this was made, the outline assumes the profile of a 2-story home with a roof. The point here is to give perspective on how drastic a change my property will go through if this building goes as planned. Along with the view, other significant impacts take place, such as the disruption of privacy and sunlight for the master bedroom, where the only natural light for this room comes from this westerly view. The 8th slide helps demonstrate the proximity of the proposed structure to my house. The fence line is the edge of my property, and the applicant is requesting to be allowed to construct a building only 5 foot off that fence. I have concerns of the building's impact on the privacy of my backyard, as well as issues with the change in sunlight impacted by the building. The 5-foot setback is assigned under the assumption that the sides of buildings face each other, while the backyards would typically face each other. The setbacks for backyards help expand the openness of the private space between homes. The result of allowing these variances to go through would be the buildings that are much closer as compared to other buildings built under the guidelines and expectations of the R10 ordinances. This brings me to my final set of concerns regarding how the property would not fit with both the R10 guidelines and the aesthetic of the neighborhood. While variance requests are useful for helping neighborhoods and communities, the applicant is asking for a significant number of variance requests, as well as significant changes within those requests. Those requests mean a significant change to the outlook and flow of the neighborhood that goes against the charm of the neighborhood that has been provided by the ordinance rules. Granting such deviations from the R10 standards puts my property at risk for the aforementioned reasons, as well as the resaleability and value, since my property will be the only property in the neighborhood with placement, view, and proximity next to such an unstandard building. If granted, I would have to ask why the current rules and ordinances for the R10 zone properties, if such deviated structures are allowed to be built anyway. So in conclusion, my opposition to the variance requests rests on the impact of privacy done to my property, the view and sunlight impacts, as well as the vast deviation the variances would provide from the current neighborhood charm and aesthetic. There are more concerns that I have, however, I felt these were the most impactful and relevant for the board to hear. Thank you for your time and letting me speak.
So if I can, I'd like to address the standards for granting a variance, which Mr. Coleman didn't touch on them specifically in his remarks, but of course in the application. Address how the variances will meet those requirements. And to me, the most important is the first variance element, which is, we often talk about the hardship element of it, whether or not the variance is necessary, whether or not the circumstances on the property create a hardship. And I think it's clear in this case, since the lot is so small, that there is presumably a hardship to the property owner, but the question is the other word of that element, which is unnecessary hardship. Do the setbacks, the driveway requirements, and so on that the applicant is asking to be varied create an unnecessary hardship for the property owner? And I think in this case, the answer is no. Those setbacks, those limitations exist for a reason, and the reason is so that to prevent buildings from being located too close to each other or to be from being located on lots that are too small to accommodate them. And even in the R10 district, which is a fairly high density residential district, there still is intended to be separation between the buildings, and there still is intended to be a minimum lot size on which structures can be built. And houses are still intended to be proportional to the size of the lot. And in this case, I think if you look at the satellite photos, if we can go back maybe one. So to give you a sense, because it's hard to tell without having been out there for the board, it's hard to tell how small this lot really is. But if you look at the satellite photos and look at the car that's driving by in front of the lot, and that gives you proportionally a good sense of how big the lot is. The lot across the front or from front to back is about 3 car lengths. It is a very, very small lot. And we would submit that under these circumstances, the setbacks exist to make sure that the house is proportional to the lot. And so the variance that the property owner is requesting is a variance from what is certainly a hardship for them, but not an unnecessary hardship. It's intentional as part of the structure of the UDO that they not build a house that essentially takes up the entire lot and essentially takes up my client's entire backyard. That's all that we wanted to address, and we look forward to hearing the board's decision.
All right, Toby, you have anything to add or rebut?
I would just like to just point out a couple of items here. So first of all, as I noted, I just want to make this really clear because it was referenced previously. Section 10.3.5 of the UDO specifically says that a single unit living detached house may be erected on a non-conforming lot that has less than the prescribed minimum lot area, depth, or width. So in other words, the UDO expressly permits a home to be built on this property. And in fact, there is nothing in the UDO that says you have to somehow adjust the size to make a smaller than typical house for a smaller than typical lot. That doesn't exist in the UDO. The other thing I'll note, and I want to make this really, really clear, in case it is not. I think it is, but I just want to make it really clear. The opposition is coming from the property to the east. We are not asking for a variance from the setback requirements to that property. We are only asking for a variance from the setback requirements to the property to the north. So we are permitted, we will stay well within the UDO requirements and comply with the UDO requirements in terms of setback from Mr. Avishan's property. I hope I said that correctly. My apologies if I didn't. And again, the only other request we are making is a request for an increase in the amount of what's known as driveway area in front of the house. There's been no objection that I am aware of in relation to that. And the reason for that is only so that there can be a turnaround for safety purposes. Again, we have listed a number of hardships, including the size of the property, the topography of the property, as well as its location, its frontage along a major highway. This is not something that's created by my client. There's been a home on this property for a very long time. It was taken down in 2014, but again, we believe we've presented sufficient evidence to meet all of the criteria and welcome any questions that the board may have.
Mr. Coots, I'd also ask just to make sure that Toby didn't have any cross-examination for the opposition's witness as well.
I do not. I do. to the extent that I don't think this is very necessary, but I do object to any of the representations regarding the house, the house drawn on the picture, as well as I would just note that issues of privacy, sunlight, etc. While I can understand those concerns, are not relevant to the question of whether or not a variance, whether or not we get a variance.
All right, staff, you have anything further?
Oh, we do not.
Okay. Any questions from the board for the applicant? All right, hearing none, we will close the evidentiary hearing and we'll begin board deliberations. Thank you, Toby and Randy. All right, who wants to start?
This is Don. I would like to go ahead and make a motion to approve. I think everything has been covered satisfactory, and since it's a small lot, it's not a whole lot can be done there on that lot.
Mm-hmm. Kathy? Anybody else?
Yeah, well, it is a small lot and not anything really that the applicant can do about that. I was just wondering about the alternatives that staff had suggested.
What specifically? You want them to go back, look at it or not?
Well, that the setback could be changed, but I guess if based upon what the staff has said, there would need to be a reduction in size of the garage. That would be detrimental to the property, obviously.
Michael, you have anything? Everybody good? We got one motion on the deck.
I'll second it.
All right, we have one motion by Don, a second by Kathy. That's where we are, okay. Any disapprove?
I'll call the roll for that. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Rudisil, are you able to video in, or is your camera not working today?
I have some technology issues that I'm trying to remedy, but I am here.
Also glad that so much as you can see and hear, we're good. All righty, on the motion to approve, Mr. Mile?
Approve.
Thank you. Ms. Rudisil?
Approve.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Coons?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Sutton?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Rainey?
Approve.
Thank you. That makes 5.
Now move to new business evidentiary hearing A. 2812 Charleston Oaks Drive, Cambridge Classic Homes LLC is your property owner. That's variance BOA 0049-2021. And Eric, I have you up for a presentation. Eric, you ready? Can somebody unmute him?
Sorry about that. I was going on and on.
I'm sure it was grand.
Let me back up. So this is a request for a 3,140 square foot variance, which equates to complete relief from UDO section 9.1.9, which requires lots within an urban watershed protection overlay district to set aside at least 40% of the lot area as forestation area to allow for the construction of a detached house on a 0.18 acre property zone residential 6, conditional use, urban watershed protection overlay district, which is located at 2812 Charleston Oaks Drive. And the applicant is Cambridge Classic Homes, LLC. So this is in the northeastern part of town, Wakefield area, generally speaking, which has this urban watershed protection overlay district. As you can see, this lot and all of the lots in the neighborhood have this same requirement. It does back up to a portion of the golf course. And these homes, I believe, were platted at a time the forestation requirement was not in effect for these properties. So as you look at adjacent properties in the vicinity, you can see that they're not forested to the 40% extent either, generally speaking. This is the proposed dwelling on the lot. Again, it is a 0.18 acre parcel. Fairly small, less than a quarter acre lot. And the applicants, are building on one of the few remaining yet to be developed properties. Again, the majority of homes in this neighborhood were built at a time this requirement did not exist. So they were not subject to it at the time of their construction. Happy to answer any questions you may have of me at this time, but otherwise that would conclude my presentation.
Eric, yeah, from John. So when you, this urban watershed POD overlay district and 40% of the lot has forestation areas, like in layman's terms, what is that? Is like can't cut trees, what it's supposed to look like, just natural area, like what is that?
Well, it's a combination. You can do it through tree conservation, which would be difficult to do if you look at this aerial.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to preserve trees that don't exist on the lot. At least at the time of this aerial, did not appear to have any trees. But it can also be made up through thickly planted treed areas. So you plant a lot of small saplings and let them develop into a forest. But essentially, it's supposed to be densely forested. The 40% that is to be treed has an expectation that it's fully it's pretty densely populated.
It's forestation. It's not necessarily just green space. It's true forestation, but what we're talking about here is forestation standards in an unforested area.
Correct, and the 40% forestation rules apply to the city's various watershed protection overlay districts. This one being a protection area that protects an intake point in the Neuse River downstream from the Falls Lake Dam.
Yeah. Okay.
And that went into effect, I believe, the watershed overlay went into effect in the early 2000s, but at the time it was adopted, did not contain the 40% forestation requirement. That was imposed with the adoption of the city's Unified Development Ordinance in 2013, which went into effect in September of 2013.
Got it. Okay.
But I believe this lot predates
All that. Yeah.
that either in its preliminary form or maybe even its final plating. I'm not certain off the top of my head of the plating date. I'm sure it looks like it's from 2003. It's when it was platted, so it predates that 40% forestation requirement.
All right, any board questions from Eric or Eric? Outside of mine, okay. Worth, are you here?
And some of these lots even date from the late 90s. Worth can give more detail.
Okay. All right, Worth, let's get you sworn in real quick. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you provide will be the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your name and address in relationship to the case?
Worth Mills, address 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302, Raleigh, North Carolina 27612. I have a presentation as well. If Eric could skip over, there it is. All right, so again, Worth Mills here on behalf of the property owner to request complete relief from the Urban Watershed Protection Overlay District's requirement for 40% afforestation on each lot in order to construct a single family home on this 0.18 acre lot. Keith Wood with Cambridge Classic Homes LLC is on the line as well, as is Rob Wetzel, contract purchaser, both of whom are available to answer questions if necessary. This has been a fairly common variance request for lots within the UW pod that have remained vacant after the Urban Watershed Overlay incorporated the 40% forestation requirement after 2013. A8215 and A8415 were two fairly recent UW pod forestation variances that are also within the Wakefield Plantation development. There's been other UW pod variances outside of the Wakefield Plantation, including BOA 1221, which was approved in April of this year. Next slide, please. So this slide shows an IMAPS aerial view of the 0.18 acre parcel located adjacent to the Wakefield Plantation Golf Course. It has previously been used by the golf maintenance crew for easier access onto the golf course, but now is proposed to be developed for a single family home. The site has been graded and cleared, so there are no trees on the property today, but it does remain undeveloped. Next slide. And here's a street view of that same lot from Charleston Oaks Drive. It has approximately 95 feet of street frontage along that drive. And you can also see in this photo the scale of the existing homes that are adjacent to the site at 2804 and 2816 Charleston Drive. Just to reiterate that the house that we are proposing to build is very much in line with the character and style of those in place today. Next slide, please. As has been discussed, the property is zoned RXCU with that Urban Watershed Overlay District, as are the surrounding properties. The UW pod originally was put in place in 2008 without the 40% forestation requirement. That 40% forestation requirement was applied after adoption of the UDO in 2013, which has led to some interesting interpretations for these vacant lots within the UDO, and hence the quite frequent requests that have been made for relief from the forestation requirements. Next slide, please. So this is a zoomed in image of the proposed plot plan. The full plan is included in your agenda packet, and I believe Eric shared it as well. The plot plan proposes a 31,444 square foot home with 3,950 square feet of coverage area. When you compare that with the previous IMAPS aerial, again, this home is very much compatible in coverage and scale to those other homes along Charleston Drive. Next slide, please. And I did some calculations of the averages of the 9 immediate lots heading southeast on the same side of Charleston Oaks Drive as this lot, heading towards the cul-de-sac. The 9 lots that we looked at were built between 2000 and 2013, which was prior to the city's interpretation requiring that 40% forestation in the urban watershed. The average lot size here is 0.165 acres with an average heated area of 4,209 square feet The property at question here is 0.18 acres and a proposed home of 3,144 square feet of heated area. And so again, just to reiterate, we're asking to build a smaller than average home on a slightly larger lot than those immediately adjacent to us, all of which do not comply with the 40% forestation requirement either. Next slide. And then again, just really want to make sure that the board is aware. This is a Google Street View of some of those homes that were a part of those average calculations. These homes encompass a good majority of the lot's areas and again, do not provide for any forestation. Last slide, please. And so I'll touch on the four standards and then we will be available for questions and comment. So significant hardship would result from strict application of this ordinance. 40% of the lot dedicated for forestation would leave only 4,704 square feet of available building space, which would result in a home significantly smaller than the adjacent properties. The hardship results from both the limited size of the lot as well as the lack of any trees that we could count towards that forestation requirement. Meeting the 40% forestation requirement would require significant tree planting and cost, which in turn drives up development cost and the ultimate sale price of the home. The hardship results as well from an interpretation error, confusion within the city's UDO. As I mentioned, the watershed overlay was applied in 2008 without this 40% forestation requirement. However, when the UDO was adopted in 2013, an interpretation was made that imposed that 40% requirement on all homes within the urban watershed. There has been a quite lengthy process within the city to figure out a way to remedy this error, but as of today, there has not been any sort of resolution. The hardship did not result from the actions of the property owner. This lot was cleared and graded prior to the current owner taking title. And lastly, it is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. So the urban watershed was originally meant to shield and protect a potential water source for the town of Wake Forest, but that source is no longer needed. And so relief from this variance is not degrading any of the cities or any other municipalities' potable water supply. But this variance would allow the applicant to build a home at a similar scale and a similar character of those surrounding it. And we believe that this request is reasonable, and we ask that you approve it this afternoon. Mr. Wetzel, Mr. Wood, and I are all available if you have any questions, and we appreciate your time.
All right, thanks, Worth. Any additional participants in support? I think outside of what's been presented. No opponents today, thus no applicant rebuttal. Worth, you have anything else to add? Are you good?
No, sir. Thank you, though.
Staff, anything further?
No, thank you.
Any board questions for the applicant? I will close the evidentiary portion of this hearing and begin for board deliberations. I'll make a motion to approve. I think it's pretty clear with the timing of this thing and the watershed standards requirements are having been put in after this entire thing was kind of planned. I think it bears great reason why we should approve this. But board deliberations, but that's my motion.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion, and who was second?
That was
Justin?
Michael Rainey.
Michael Rainey, okay.
Michael Rainey.
All right.
Okay, got it. On the motion to approve, Vice Chairman Kuntz.
Approve.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey.
Approve.
Thank you, Mr. Mile.
Approve.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton.
Approve.
Thank you, Ms. Rudisill.
Approve.
Thank you.
All right, Worth, you still there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a, I'm jumping the meeting real quick. I have that you want to continue variance BOA 0052-2021
That's correct.
to the December, is that December 3rd or is that December 6th? What meeting is that next? What's our next meeting, Catherine?
pulling it up right now. I think it's December 13. Is that correct, Eric? Or
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, 13th, yeah, okay, so you want to continue BOA 0052-2021 to December 13th? BOA,
Yes, sir.
okay. All right, that's good. While I had you, I want to pull that up, so don't waste your time.
Appreciate that.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're going back to 5839 Capital Board Gold Moon LLC is a property owner. Variance BOA dash 0051 dash 2021. Let me repeat that. That was terrible. BOA dash 0051 dash 2021 is the applicant. That's correct. Yeah. And Justin, I have you presenting this case.
That is correct.
All right. Let's go.
All right.
Justin, this is your first case, right? Presenting today?
Yeah, yeah. Let me swear him.
Correct, Dan.
Yeah.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, proceed. Thanks.
All right. All right, can you guys see the correct slides?
We can see the slides and then the slide with notes on the side.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of. Let me change the monitor.
That's awesome.
All right, there you go. That should work, right?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Today's item for consideration is case number BOA 0051 2021. Property owner Gold Moon LLC is requesting an 85-foot variance to the maximum primary street build-to setback as set forth in UDO section 3.4.5.c.1 and a 46-foot variance to the maximum primary street build-to setback on Sumner Boulevard as required in UDO section 3.4.5C1 and a variance to the required 50% building width and build-to adjacent to Sumner Boulevard as required in UDO section 3.4.5C2 to allow for 272 feet, which is 39% of the lot width of the building edge within the build-to range instead of the required 346 feet off of a building width within the build-to adjacent to Sumner Boulevard. In addition to that, they're seeking a variance for complete relief from UDO section 3.4.5E1, which states only a maximum of 2 bays of on-site parking within a single drive aisle is permitted between the building and the street. And they're looking to allow a maximum of 4 parking bays, 2 drive aisles, and 1 row of parked cars as inventory display, which is in association with the expansion of a existing car dealership. The property is shown here highlighted in yellow. It is on a 5.37 acre property zoned IX7, parking limited frontage. It's located at 5839 Capitol Boulevard. I did kind of just want to give you, kind of get oriented real quick. So Capitol Boulevard shown here, the southern portion, the north is pointing plain east. Here is the existing conditions. You can see the existing footprint of the building. Capitol Boulevard is here, and the Sumner Boulevard extension is on the right. And this is the proposed condition. You can see the proposed Lexus Raleigh building. 2 drive aisles, and 4 parking bays maximum, and also 1 row of basically our inventory display. With that, I will hand it on over to the applicant and will be available for any questions.
All right, thanks, Justin. Any questions from the board for Justin before we go to the applicant? All right, here none, we'll go to Isabel. Ms. Maddox?
Yes. Oh, can you hear me?
I can. Let's get you sworn in.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And name and address in relationship to the case, please.
Hi, I'm Isabel Maddox. My address is PO Box 946, Raleigh 27602. Here today representing Gold Moon LLC, Silver Moon LLC, and Lumley LLC, which are three property owners that are recombining into this development parcel. And also with me today are Lofty Smith and Rob Caudle, civil engineers of Withers and Ravenel. I'll go ahead and get them sworn at this time.
All right, Rob, name and address.
Hey, Rob Caudle, 137 South Wilmington Street, Suite 200, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601, civil engineer on the project.
All right, do you swear or affirm the testimony you provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, Lofty.
Yeah, Lofty Smith, 137 South Wilmington Street, Suite 200, Raleigh, 27601, civil engineer for the owner.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ms. Maddox.
Thank you. First, I'd like to move that the application material, staff report, and exhibits provided today be admitted into evidence.
All right, so moved. Thank you.
And we're here today, as Justin indicated, to request variances from the parking limited frontage requirements. Now, the intent of the parking limited frontage is to allow access by automobiles, but to maintain some level of walkability. Now, we do need variances from these requirements, but we will continue to maintain a landscape, sidewalk, street-facing entrances, pedestrian paths from our front door to the sidewalk and to the transit stop in front of this site. So we do believe there will be adequate walkability on this site. But first, let's talk about context. If you've ever bought a car in Raleigh, you probably know the general area we're talking about on Capitol Boulevard. There are probably 20 dealerships along this part of Capitol. Most of those are on the west side of Capitol, as this one is. In the block, the subject block, which basically runs between Oak Forest and Wake Forest Road, there are 5 car dealerships and 1 boat dealership in this block alone, all on the west side of Capitol. None of the properties on this block are currently built in compliance with the parking limited frontage requirements. This is just not really a pedestrian area. It's on Capitol Boulevard, which in places is 9 lanes wide, 9, and right in front of this site, I've measured it on GIS, and it's at least 110-foot wide right-of-way. So it's, a major thoroughfare, not a lot of walking that goes on there. I would say that very few people who come to this site come on foot. There may be a few exceptions, but I don't think too many do. So if you come to the next slide, please, you'll see that Johnson Lexus has been in business in this location for at least 20 years, probably 25. And it's time to redevelop, to expand their business, to modernize it, to just deal with, it's a growing business, a growing city. Certainly Raleigh has experienced tremendous population growth in those 20 years. And we think that's a good, clean design they've come up with. But in looking at this and trying to figure out this redevelopment, they've faced many significant hardships. The biggest is the requirement that they extend Sumner Boulevard. Sumner Boulevard exists on the east side of Capitol, but it doesn't come over to the west side. So the biggest impediment to this development is the requirement that they extend this major roadway. So they're building 691 linear feet of an 80-foot wide street, public street, which kind of wraps around the site. And so not only is this a huge expense to the tune of $1.1 million is the current construction estimate, it also consumes 1.46 acres of right-of-way, which typically, and the engineers will tell you, more specifically, but that's a lot of potential parking spaces that we don't have. Also, placing the Sumner Boulevard extension in the way the city has approved it or wants it to appear, it really does drive this lot into a very irregular shape, which is another hardship that we have here. And finally, Johnson has a current facility here, and they are not completely tearing this down to the ground and building back up. They're trying to maintain some really expensive service equipment that exists on the back little edge of this lot. And, you know, we think that's better for their business because they can keep using that while they're doing this renovation around it, but also better for the environment. They don't have to put unnecessarily equipment in the landfill, et cetera. So these significant hardships do require a number of variances. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. This states the requirements. One, along Capitol and along Sumner, there's a requirement for a minimum 100-foot setback. So no further back than 100 feet. And I'll show you the site plan, and we're going to get our engineer to walk you through that in just a minute. But just to go through what our requests are. So on Capitol, because of the shape of the lot, the placement of Sumner, and the desire to keep that current maintenance equipment in place, we need an 85-foot variance there. On Sumner, we need a 46-foot variance because there's a very irregular street frontage there. It's really actually a lot of street frontage, but it's not really capable of being built with a building to consume 50% of that. On the 50% requirement, on Capitol, we're actually compliant with that. We have more than 50% of building in the street frontage. But as I said, on Sumner, it's really a difficult requirement because we have 691 feet of street frontage. We don't have nearly that much building to put there. So we're only hitting 39% there. And finally, the requirement that we have a maximum of 2 bays of parking and 1 drive aisle. In this case, we're requesting that we have a maximum of 5 bays of parking, basically, and 2 drive aisles. And so I want to go to the next slide, please. And that's our site plan. I want to call on Lofty Smith, one of our civil engineers, to kind of walk you through the site plan and explain the hardships and also what we propose here. Lofty?
Good afternoon. If we could go back to the aerial that was in the staff report, I think it might actually be more beneficial. There we go. Sumner Boulevard, the intersection of Sumner and Capitol, is in the lower right-hand part of the screen. As you can see there, the bulk of our automobile storage is in the proposed right-of-way of that Sumner Boulevard extension. The site, as Isabel mentions, it currently functions as one campus on 3 different parcels, and we have 4 buildings and various operations of car maintenance are performed in the 4 buildings. So the required Sumner Boulevard extension is going to interrupt those services. So we can no longer take cars back and forth. I mean, it wouldn't be safe to take cars back and forth across the proposed right-of-way. We did evaluate putting a tunnel under Sumner Boulevard, but it wasn't feasible from a grading standpoint. And we also have a city sewer that would be in the way of such a tunnel. So that sort of sets the picture for you of our obstacles with the Sumner Boulevard expansion. And we also don't have the luxury of just tearing the entire building down and starting over, because we have to keep the existing building functioning. And the primary one of those is the service department, because as Isabel mentioned, the expense of the equipment, the hoist, the hydraulic lifts, the pneumatic equipment would be difficult, if not impossible, to relocate and reuse. So from an environmental standpoint, keeping that makes a lot of sense. And here again, from a function standpoint, we need to keep the service and maintenance portion of the dealership going at all times. And that service area that was highlighted in red, we can go back to the other slide now. That is the area of the building that we are keeping in place. That's the service and maintenance area, and is actually a 2-story part of the building. To the rear, there is a ramp to access the upper portion, and I'll get back to that ramp in just a minute. So the service area is also being expanded. We currently have 29 service stations, service bays, and we're doubling that capacity because of need. So here again, we don't need to be taking cars back and forth across Sumner Boulevard. With the dedication of the almost 1.5 acres of right-of-way of Sumner Boulevard, we are losing the ability to display and or store 156 vehicles. That's a problem for a car dealership, any car dealership. We are proposing to add parking to the rear of the building, as you can see, which is currently, that area is a vacant piece of our property. So the net loss for us would be 50 cars after the expansion of Sumner Boulevard. But our problem is twofold. If Sumner Boulevard were not being extended, we were not required to extend Sumner Boulevard. Yes, we could possibly build a new building and bring it close to Capitol, but because we need to keep the service bay functioning, and we don't need to have here again a separate building for the car sales part of this, because of the just the function of the building between the employees, the finance department, the accounting, the locker rooms, the break rooms, the parts department, it all really needs to be in one building, and it starts with maintaining the existing service base. The current building does not have an accessible route to the sidewalk along Capitol Boulevard, and we're not going to turn a blind eye, certainly, to pedestrian connectivity. Along our Capitol Boulevard's frontage, there is a bus stop, and in 2016, the city built a 6-foot sidewalk in there. We are proposing an accessible route from Capitol Boulevard very close to that existing bus stop to the front door of the proposed dealership. Those are all the points that I wanted to make about why we are where we are and how we want to expand and what our needs are for the expansion.
Okay, thank you, Lofty. And if you'll go to the next slide, just to recap the hardships. So the location of the building is dictated by the fixed maintenance equipment and requirement, and the requirement to install Sumner Boulevard. They both kind of push us in one way, and they push us, as to the maintenance equipment, they push us back to the back of the site. The building placement leaves very limited area in the rear for parking, which dictates we need to put the parking in the front. We have that little triangular piece in the back, which we're going to use. But as I say in the last bullet, a car dealership use requires significant parking for customers, inventory, repairs, and loaners. And losing that 1.5 acres of property, which is going to cost us at least 50, if not 100 parking spaces, really drives the need for this variance. And the irregular shape of the lot, I didn't really mention that, but that sort of triangular shape of the lot, further makes the building placement difficult. So continuing on, just to go through the general elements of a variance request, I think we've discussed hardships fairly thoroughly. We can confirm these hardships were not created by the applicant. The biggest hardship, Sumner Boulevard, and the resulting shape of the lot is dictated by the city. And the location of the specialized maintenance equipment has been in place for a long time, well before the parking limited frontage requirements were imposed on the site. Also, these hardships are unique to this site. Other property owners along Capitol are not going to be required to install $1 million, 1.5 acre right-of-way dedication boulevard on their site. And finally, go to the next slide, please. We believe that these variances are consistent with the intent of the ordinance to maintain walkability while accommodating autos. As we've said previously, as Lofty indicated, we will be adding improvements to facilitate walkability, comfortable pedestrian passage. There will be a sidewalk maintained. There will be landscaping along that, creating sort of an enclosure. For pedestrians, there will be direct pedestrian access to doors on both Sumner and Capitol. There will be a direct access to the sidewalk and to the transit stop. So we feel like the pedestrian nature of the area will still be maintained and protected. This will allow modernization of a building that is, 20 or more years old. And it's a successful Raleigh business. It needs to grow. It needs to be modernized, but it still will allow us to reuse existing equipment, which we think will be protective of the environment and also protective of this business. And finally, it supports a longtime Raleigh business. I think we believe we've submitted substantial material and competent evidence of this hardship and the basis for this variance request, and I and our team are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Maddox. Any additional participants to support? I don't have any signed up, nor do I have any opponents. You have anything further, Ms. Maddox?
No.
Okay. Staff, anything to add?
No.
Any questions from the board, from the applicant or staff? All right, we'll go ahead and close the evidentiary component of the hearing and begin board deliberations, or I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Thanks, Don.
Second.
We have a second from
That was Michael.
Michael. All right.
On the motion to approve? Mr. Mile?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Rainey?
Approved.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Kuntz?
Approve.
Thank you. Ms. Rudisell?
I'm sorry, approve.
That's okay. Mr. Sutton?
Approve.
Thank you. That makes 5. Thank you.
All right, good job. Thank you. That's our final case for today. So we'll go ahead and close the review component of our hearing and move to the approval or review of the minutes. Anybody have any questions, comments on the minutes from October 11? I'll review it and I'll make a motion to approve unless someone has something to bring up.
In that motion.
If I heard correctly, Mr. Kuntz, you moved to approve the minutes, and Mr. Sutton, you seconded the motion?
That's correct.
Okay, on the vote on that, please. Mr. Kuntz?
Approve.
Mr. Sutton?
Approve.
Ms. Rudisell?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Mile?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Rainey?
Approve.
Thank you.
That makes it, right? Are we good? Anything else we need to talk about, Catherine?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
Y'all have a good
Anybody else?
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, y'all too. Anybody else have anything you want to bring up? Are we good? Okay. All right, thank you for y'all time and service, and I will see y'all the 13th, if not sooner. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too.
You too.